to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael G. Neese, president of Our Future is Kind, and your trusted companion as we search out kindness strategies we can use in our everyday lives. Together, as we chase the idea of building a kinder future, we will interview experts in kindness, team building, human motivation, corporate culture building, relationships, plus politicians, artists, and those with a vision for a healthy and kind future, one we all want to live in and deserve to enjoy together. In addition to interviews, we will consider positive depictions of humanity's future in art, literature, movies, and media. And we will issue kindness challenges each week, give an update about Our Future is Kind, the company, and what it's doing to stay true to its mission. So, let's dive in. Welcome back to Our Future is Kind podcast. Today's special guest is Hardeep Kaur, and I'm very, very excited to introduce her to you. She's a global visionary leader with over 25 years of experience in operations and general management in large pharma, where I spent so much of my career. She's currently working as a global change manager and communication lead, developing and implementing change management strategy to drive transformational changes at the workplace of the future. In her previous role, she was responsible for transforming training and learning culture, so we have that overlap as well. So, Hardeep, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Michael, for having me. I'm really excited to talk about kindness, and particularly not only where we are from our current state perspective, but also like how this sort of manifests itself into the future as we start to embrace the whole technology era.
Yeah, it is a very interesting set of technologies and circumstances that are about to hit us. And so, yeah, I definitely want to find out more from you, your thoughts on that. But just to give everybody a bit more sense of what you do and what your day-to-day is like, just tell us who you are and a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. So I feel like I'm born and bred in the pharma industry. So currently, I'm actually working on digital transformation. So this is leading large-scale transformation, particularly experiencing, how do we actually enhance the customer experience, right? So work, as you know, in pharma, we deal with a lot of, our healthcare practitioners, our patients, our customers. So my goal is how do we sort of, enhance that and make that better. So I've been in leadership roles for majority of my life, and I think the topic of kindness, it's very close to my heart for a couple of reasons. One, not only is part of my core value, but I think it's, where I work, it's also part of company's core value. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like I've stayed in the company for so long, is, if your core values match up, you can really thrive in that environment. And I've been able to do that.
Yeah, that feels really true. The idea that you have alignment of purpose with those around you and with the company that you're working for, that absolutely can spark better conversations and more trust. Since you are an expert in change management, one of the questions that I have top of mind for you is change can be really hard. And how do you stay kind? How do you cultivate kindness within teammates, especially the ones who are cutting edge? They really want the new thing. And then you have others who are their establishment. They know how things work and how things have been tried and true and trusted. How do you bridge those gaps, and how do you stay kind during big change?
Yes, and it's a great question. In fact, I'm actually, working on a project which centers around that, right? So I start off with this, I wouldn't say it's a notion, but this mindset of like, we hire the best people, right? So, I think we hire the smartest people. The whole sort of this notion of change is about this anxiety that is, brought forward around fear of loss, right? We're going to lose something, right? It's going to be, I won't have control over this anymore. So if we take that whole sort of notion away from, you're not going to lose control, but things are going to get better, more from an opportunity standpoint, I think the narrative starts to look a little different. But also at the same time being respectful that people are going to, go through this fear, right? That whole loss, right? That whole sort of anxiety, whole concerns, because change is extremely personal to people. So no matter how, large the transformations are, you are going to travel through that change journey at your own pace. You're going to go through all those motions, the way you sort of you decide and the way it's going to impact you personally. So I think kindness comes in extremely well, actually ties in, very sort of, flawlessly because leaders who are empathetic and are kind and understand what their people are going through during the process can actually create that environment, right, where people are able to absorb the changes or sort of get on that change curve much, much faster. Fundamentally, I feel like, when you are going through the change process, you just want to be heard, right? You want to be heard. And I think once you acknowledge that, and all that through kindness, how you listen, how you engage, really helps. So one of the things that I have done to really drive this larger transformation is really just that notion of kindness and empathy, right? And really listening. It has helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I think you're right. Expressing empathy and really trying to put yourself in the shoes of those others. Do you ever find that that's difficult for some of the leaders that you manage, some of the managers who are trying to help make the change blossom? Is there difficulty in them trying to hear the other perspective? And do you have any tips and tricks on how you can enable them to better be empathetic?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, right? And particularly where we are at sort of this juxtaposition of, right, technology taking over, majority of our tasks. In general, I think leaders who are emotionally aware, who are emotionally intelligent, find this a little bit easier, right? But I also believe that, the leaders who have higher level of emotional intelligence will navigate through this process much, much quicker. So my, encouragements to leaders around me is really do that self-reflection. Understand where you are in that journey of emotional awareness of yourself, because leader has a lot of impact on how they can drive change, right? And in fact, I think have this sort of, concept that I always share is you could be a thermometer or you could be a thermostat. So as a leader walks in an environment, a thermometer is just gauging the temperature, like what is going on around me, and perhaps even sort of like just stopping that. But what a thermostat can do is they can regulate, right? So if I'm very aware of what I am feeling and what's happening in the environment, I can actually change my tone and create that atmosphere of sort of ease, right? Psychological safety, which then reflects, through the kindness. So I won't say I'm on a mission, right, to change others, but I do try to explain, how this has helped me to tell my stories, and hopefully that can impact. And at least, the folks that I lead, I make sure that they understand the importance of emotional awareness and the connection of kindness and empathy in workplaces.
Have you ever found that there's been a change that has come up in the workplace that was difficult for you to get through? And have you had anybody who's kind of helped you shape those conversations that you have now about when other people have a hard time with change?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you look at your career, and in fact, I've had quite a few roles within Merck. And some of those roles where you go in with the notion of this is what the role's going to look like. And when you actually start, it's not where you thought it was going to be, right? So all kinds of, emotions are going like, why did I make this decision? Or, was this the right one for me? So it's that whole, sort of like first the journey that you go through. And secondly, if you think about it, in the new role, you don't have any control because you're still learning. So you have to be extremely cognizant of where you are in that journey. And I have felt that. I'm like, look, I'm new, right? So I have to sit back and learn, and everything changes for you in that moment. where you were in your previous role able to make decisions faster because you have all the data, you have all the experience. Here you have to work differently. You rely on your colleagues till you come up to speed, and so forth. So absolutely, I've been in situations where, I had, had to go through the change curve myself, the sense of loss, sense of control. But at the same time, I had great mentors and great bosses, and having those, conversations respectfully has definitely.
So having the mentors and having those great leaders who were helpful to you helped you kind of shift into more of that leadership role for your career. Am I hearing that?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah?
And then also it's a temporary thing, right? I had to sort of acknowledge, okay, this may be just 30, 60, 90 days till I come up to speed. So knowing that it's a journey, it goes back to how emotionally aware I am of the situation I'm in. So some of the innate skills do help you to navigate through those, changes, right? But understanding how I feel and what is actually happening inside me can help me navigate through that. So, emotional awareness and self-awareness is one of the key attributes for good leadership.
So it's very interesting, Hardeep. I want to explore this with you just a little bit deeper. I was in pharma for 18 years, and I've been in highly technical roles, serving as a NASA solar system ambassador and doing some fun things, working in planetariums. So I've definitely been in that world of the technical, and I think a lot of our listeners are probably sitting here scratching their heads saying, but isn't it about the process? Isn't it about the technology? Isn't it about these, like facts and figures and data? Like you're talking about warm fuzzies. Do you encounter that? And how do you try to help leaders get over that idea of, this kindness stuff is just warm and fuzzy. We don't need it. We don't have time. What are your thoughts? What's your response to that?
That's a great question, right? So I think my first way I engage with them is like, how your brain works, right? We feel first and then we think, right? So that's just the primitive brain, and nothing has changed, right? How we actually process information.
Right.
So if you feel first and then you justify all your feelings with data, right? And that is what majority of the decisions are made that way. Right, you first got instinct, and then you go look for data and make this connection. So feel and think, go together, but feel first and then think. So the notions that I present to the leaders is, listen, we are dealing with scientists, right? And in fact, I think my current project, we have to sort of actually navigate through this huge change, and majority of the people are data scientists. Great, smart people, data scientists, and for them, everything is about data. But what I remind them of is what happens, like even think about outside work. How do you make decisions outside work? Right? I mean, you sort of kind of like, I like this, and then now you go back and kind of think about why you like it, right?
Right.
So infusing that feeling to make the right decision, right, outside work can also happen at work. And in fact, it's a holistic decision making. So when we tell these great stories, right, of how important data is to drive to the right decision, but some of the decisions are actually made by feeling it, it's actually a complete picture. You can't have one or the other, right?
Right.
And then I think I'm able to shift, and I have some great stories in my back pocket where I'm able to pull them out and share them in the appropriate time. So I think storytelling is an important component where both of these things are important.
For sure. Yeah, no, I love the fact that you touch on storytelling, because I think that is the way that we learn, right? We're always telling ourselves stories. I fit in, I don't fit in. This project is a good one. This project is not good. We're always telling ourselves certain stories. And so the idea that you're bringing in storytelling just makes a lot of sense to me. I encountered a comment on some of the work that I was doing, and it was to the effect of, why should I have to care what other people think? And Why should I have to know the name of anybody else's spouse in the team? Why is that important? And the only response that I could come up with was, maybe you're not a great fit for working in this kind of team. But what are your thoughts?
That's interesting, right? Because great leaders know what differentiates, somebody, a great leader from just leader, right? To me, a great leader can actually have that emotional connection with that individual. So if I actually knew Michael, obviously your name, right? But then your kid's name, and even to a certain extent your dog's name, like what that tells me, I deeply care about you, right?
Yeah.
I care about you. And then caring can actually start to go in multiple directions. Caring also means that, I am, concerned about your well-being, right? Caring also means that I value your opinion. Caring also means that I actually respect what you have to say. All of that, creating that psychological safety where you can actually thrive and do your best work, right? Or it could be just very much like, I just need to deal with Michael and that's all I need to know. I don't need to know. But if I understand what Michael is actually going through, perhaps there is maybe some issue at home, right? Maybe, I don't know, kids are not well, or you have to take the dog to the vet. All of those things actually, impact how you show up to work, right? We're not robots. Like we can't just, switch on and off when you're at work, right? You can't just say like, I just swiped in and that means I'm a brand new person without any emotions. We don't work like we're holistic human beings, where I just talked about brain, the left side and the right side. We have to be completely in sync, right? The feel and the think. And if we can tap into this sort of, I would say uncharted territory to most extent, it's actually better because the other thing I always talk about is like, all our five senses, we actually tap into a lot more. But the deeper senses, which actually really make us human and help us develop like awesome relationships at work, can actually increase our productivity, increase our well-being. And all that leads to innovation and better work culture. So it's deeply connected. Hopefully that answered your question.
It absolutely does. Yeah, the thought process for me is exactly like what you said earlier. We are emotional beings who use reasoning to support our emotional decisions. And I think the more that we are informed as to how our emotions form and how we can get into certain moods and how we can get ourselves out of those moments where we're very negative or we're very defensive about a position that we've taken, the more we can have that psychological safety to really hear the better idea and to say, yeah, actually that is better than the one that I've been holding on to for 10 years. I think you've absolutely hit on the right notes there. For emotion can inform your data and your data can inform your emotion. One of the things that I think I read in your bio, or maybe it was on LinkedIn, you've lived on 3 different continents. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears here just a little bit and talk about kindness across different cultures. Because if you've been on 3 different continents and have met people from different backgrounds who listen to different kinds of music and have different ways of approaching work, what are your ideas of how to be most harmonious with, but still authentic with people from different cultures?
And that's a great question, right? So a little bit about that journey. So I was born and brought up in India. I left India when I was really young. So when I was young, I was like 18, and then I moved to United Kingdom, and I lived there for about 7-8 years, 7.5. And then I moved to US. So one thing that really helps me ground with this notion of kindness is really an appreciation of others, right? Appreciation of others' cultures, an appreciation of how other people work, an appreciation of how countries work, right? And how companies work. With that awareness and with that appreciation in mind, I have always had a very open mindset. Like, it's not about just my ideas are the best, but it's also about embracing different thought processes. right?
Right.
And to me, that sort of manifests itself in the growth mindset, right? So I'd never go into a meeting with, this is it, these are my idea, and this is what we're going to say. It's almost notional at most points if you're trying to problem solve something. But some characteristics of that is actually, formed very early in your childhood as well. The other thing that grounds me in the whole concept of kindness is my own spiritual journey.
Oh, tell us. Yeah.
Yeah. So I come from a faith which is a Sikh faith. It is a very small population from demographics from India perspective. It's only like 2 to 5% of the population, and and our faith is founded actually. The pedestal was kindness, right? So while that the religion itself was born in the 1400s, there was a lot of atrocities that were happening, around. And I think the founder of our faith was almost like, there's another way to deal with this, and that is kindness, right? So deep rooted in my faith and my beliefs is like, we can turn this around. We can get to the same goals by being kind, right? So if you're born and brought up and kind of like your early childhood is in that sort of like immersive culture of kindness, it then takes shape and it's deep rooted. And that's why I was connecting it to Mark, because it is just like very much in sync. So then when you start to practice that, right, as you move across the continent, I found that to be a very important part of who I am, right? And I was not willing to give it up, and I actually used it to my advantage in all kinds of situations, whether they were personal or whether they were work related. Being open, being kind, being respectful are synonymous, and they all go together to create that healthy environment. So I believe living in different countries, being a little open to that and having my own strong personal values married up pretty well to the type of leadership or leadership qualities I want to thrive for. And I'm still learning. I'm still growing.
Well, yeah, well, I think that's true of all of us. If we're not growing, we're not living, really. So, you bring up this, the Sikh faith and talking about kindness. I'm sure that over your entire lifetime, you've had people say, kindness doesn't always win, and kindness is weak. Please speak to that. I absolutely don't believe that to be true, but I want to hear how you approach those conversations when somebody says kindness is weak and we shouldn't have to do it. And how do you deal with that?
I tie it to 3 different skills, right? If you want to persuade somebody, if you want to negotiate, and if you want to influence, what are the 3 things these 3 skills have in common? Understanding what the other person is thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Fundamentally. So if I'm trying to negotiate and I'm connecting all of these to kindness and then to workplace, right? For each one of these, whether I'm trying to be persuasive, whether to, influence a leader or somebody else to make a different decision, I still need to understand where they're coming from. What are they thinking? Right? If I need to influence, right, whether it's my peers, up, down, across, I still need to understand what Michael's thinking, what somebody else is thinking, to understand that, right, deep thought process, so I can actually negotiate, I can influence, I can persuade, all of those things which really are tied to leadership skills to drive your business forward. They all come from being kind to people. Like if I am like I walk in and I have this ego and this chip on my shoulder that I'm not going to listen to my idea is the best idea, I'm not going to be able to thrive, and I'm not going to be able to progress, right? And progress the business forward. So while we think it's the weakness, I think it's ultimate strength of a leader, right? Like how you can influence, persuade, and motivate others. I mean, all that's all connected together.
I utterly agree with you. And just to also add in one other little thought here, when I've seen people be kind in situations where something is ballistic, somebody's very angry, they're yelling, they're mad, some big emotions are going on, and somebody can bravely step into that storm and say, hey, it seems like a lot is going on. Are you all right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're all on the same page and want to reach the same end goals. And I can see how passionate about this you are. And I love the fact that you care so much. It's in those moments where I've seen a leader step in and do those kinds of statements. It's transformative in those moments. And I can't imagine that any of those times I've seen it or any of those times that I've tried it, that it doesn't take a lot of courage. It takes a ton of courage. So, I mean, have you ever been in those moments where you've had to be firm, stand in your truth, and still be kind in the face of something big like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are many times where we had, I had to say, hey, let's pause for a minute. Let's all take a deep breath, right? Or, try to diffuse the situation, because what happens is, I also believe that each person's coming from their place of passion, right? They're bringing all these ideas because of their experience. Perhaps there is something more than just how they're reacting. So you got to unpack that sometimes, right? And I believe that, pausing, sort of diffusing that situation, taking a moment to kind of take a deep breath, calms us all down. And when you're calm, you can think rationally, right? When you're calm, you can be kind. But if you're just sort of like this whole motion of, everyone's riled up and everyone's kind of upset, you're not going to be able to make a good rational decision anyway. So yes, I have intervened multiple times to diffuse situation. Also intervened with myself personally with say, stop, you were just going out of line here. That self-check is, very, very important. As a leader, you have to be constantly emotionally aware.
Right. Well, it's that awareness that I want to dig into with you next. Knowing where you are emotionally and knowing how you're interacting with the others and how genuinely curious you are versus how you're just trying to get through the agenda of that meeting and get to the next thing.
Yeah.
You seem like a very grounded person. How do you get there? Are there practices that you have? Are there podcasts that you listen to, books that you read? Is there a TV show that inspires you? I mean, how do you stay motivated and inspired and grounded in who you are? What are those things that do it for you?
Well, thank you for asking the question. And I appreciate that because I also have been on a journey, right? I was not like this a few years ago. And I struggled with it. In fact, to be extremely vulnerable, I'll share a story. Long time ago, or maybe almost 10 years ago, I was given feedback like, Hardeep, you're just too, too mechanical, right? Like, you're just kind of like, you come in the meeting and you want to get things done and that's it for you. And I tell you, that feedback was life-changing experience for me. Right? What I was able to do with that feedback is turn it around. Now, I had to do some soul searching. Like deep down, I knew that in my sort of this spiritual piece, right, in my faith piece, there was this whole concept of kindness and being aware, but I wasn't somehow displaying it, or I was being extremely mechanical that at work I need to act a certain way, at home I needed to act a certain way. And I had to make some decision to be on that journey. And that journey has been almost like 10 years now. So what you see is a product of 10 years. What have I done? I have read tons of books on emotional awareness. I've done I've taken some courses, particularly with women's leadership, right? Because I think generally women are sort of connected to, they're just emotional beings. In fact, in statistics, there is no data that says men are not emotional or women are more emotional than men. That is not true at all. I think there's some perceptions we have. So, working on myself, I do listen to podcasts. I am constantly working on how can I be more aware? How can I be in the situation? How can I live in the present? I've also gone through some personal journey, some life-changing, environments, right? Which has really helped me even think more deeply about how can I be more grounded and be so sort of resilient, right? To face the world, right? To face either workplaces or anything that happens around me. So it takes a lot, right? It takes a lot to identify that gap and then take deliberate actions to work.
I'm hoping that our audience is furiously taking notes now and rewinding this part of the podcast, because I think that is such great advice that you're giving, that you have to listen to how you are being perceived by others. And when you can do that and be honest with yourself about who you are, then learning, finding those books on women's leadership and finding those practices to keep yourself thoughtful and reflective. That is such great advice. I'm glad that you brought all of those things up. Are there any particular books on leadership that you have reached for, that you love and that you recommend to all of your friends? Are there other things that you recommend people check out and learn about? We always try to give our audience some ideas of, where can they find good depictions of kindness in the world or inspiration in the world. So books, anything like that.
Yeah, and you know what I'll do, Michael? I'll actually share, a couple of books that are my favorite, because I have read so many. I will not be able to, kind of point out the ones that will stand out. I will actually send you a list of a couple of podcasts and books that I have actually read that have been transformative in my, personal journey. We'll do that for you.
Wonderful. No, I appreciate that a lot. Just to loop back to one thing that you had said about women being more emotional and how that there's no research to back that up. I introduce myself to people quite frequently as a feminist, a staunch feminist, because the idea that how we show up in the world is somewhat conditioned by how we were taught and how we were brought up. But vastly, we are very similar creatures from what I have always perceived. I think in some ways, men are, in this society at least, taught to pretend you don't have emotions. No, don't cry about that. Why are you so upset? And so I think that there can be the stereotype of men don't get emotional or don't display emotions. Well, that's maybe how a lot of men were taught to do. That's not how I was raised, and so I always kind of shake my head at the notion that men and women are somehow more qualified or less qualified on a topic because of their emotional, their emotional journeys. But can you speak to that just a little bit more, because I think there is that misconception, and I just want to hear your perspective.
Sure. In fact, I'm actually taking a course right now on women's leadership in Yale. It's like an 8 weeks long course. And so I'll start off with the notion of there is no difference in terms of emotional intelligence of men and women. There is none. I think what's different is women can get in tuned with some of those emotions much faster than men, right? Because they can feel it faster, right? So they can tap into that, and then it's also procured that way, and then they get labeled, right? In general, if you go back, we say women are more nurturing. Well, obviously, because they're used to stay home. So this is again a long time ago, right? That's how it worked. Men went out to hunt, and women were staying home taking care of the children. So not much has changed from that primitive sort of brain, right? Like how we were actually labeled that you guys take care of the children, and and men are going to go out, this hunting and bringing food back. So all that still stays in our societal cultures, right? But I think both are equal, right, in terms of emotional intelligence. I think we're just getting tuned with that much faster because that's the societal conditions that has happened, right? Like we've been staying home, taking care of the children, so then it's just made an assumption that, you guys are kinder, or you can do this much better than men can. But at the same time, I feel like if women do go out in the workplaces and demand and ask, then they're labeled aggressive, right? Like, okay, right? Are they loud or something like that? It's not the case. They're just in tune with their feelings and emotions a little bit more than men. That's all.
Right. Yeah, I find it fascinating that a lot of people who make very large statements about women are this way and men are this way, and what you find is that a lot of those statements are made based in the emotional state of the person speaking out loud at that moment, rather than some sort of data collection that they've done. I've had so many phenomenally good leaders who are female. I've had some who are male, and I've had some of all different kinds of genders who have not been so good. I think it really is more how savvy are they? I mean, because you tapped into this. How quickly can they key into what's going on in the room? What kind of interactions are going on? I think the more quickly they can comprehend that, the better they can respond to that. And so, yeah, it's I love this discussion because these are things that I'm always churning through and pondering. So I appreciate you shining the spotlight on it. What this podcast is all about is trying to develop a kinder future. Mm-hmm. It's the very simple notion that we are always building a future, but most of us are doing it without intent. We're not thinking about it. We get on the bus, go to work, do the work thing, get back on the bus, come home, make the dinner, and we just do the things, and we are not necessarily intentional about it. If we are really good about this, and we are intentional, and we really think about what the future should look like, I want you to do a little mind experiment with me. Right now it is 2025. Mm-hmm. Pretend it is 2125. Mm-hmm. You're suddenly in the future, and it's everything we hoped that it could become. Mm-hmm. What are the things that are different? Envision yourself in a place or in a situation. What are the things that have improved? How do you see that future? What do you hope is there?
Yeah, and it's a great question, right? Somebody else was asking me something similar, and they wouldn't go to 21, but they were like 5 years from now. So it was like more of a narrower. But you know what? I mean, I think if we look at where we are in terms of our, technology advancements, in terms of AI advancements, right? I think our lives are going to look a little different, right? And so they should, because that's progress, right? Yeah. If you go back 50 years, Industrial Revolution, if you go back eras where computers were just, these IBM machines, and not everyone has a laptop. So I think progress is good. But, progress, we also have to evolve as human beings with that progress, right? So to me, I kind of fast forward, and I am excited about parts of it because I don't have to do some mundane tasks. Like for me, simply maybe somebody can help me cook, right? Or do my laundry and do my dishes. Mm. But at the same time, I think, what I would like to see is deeper human connections, right? Because if my, non sort of thinking tasks are done by others, I would like to spend more quality time, with, my loved ones, right? With people I work with. To me, deeper connections and deeper relationships can be built. And I believe all of that can stem from this whole notion of kindness, right? So I think it could be, personally, I think if we use technology the way it was intended to improve the quality of our lives, it could be extremely exciting because, if I sort of think about AI has a mind, but it doesn't have a conscious. Right. So, bringing like humans into this whole loop and to the journey and really nurturing and taking care of each other and really building that, like what is important for us to survive. I think that's what I'm excited about, actually.
I love that vision of the future, that we are somehow harmonious with our technologies, but more deeply connected to others. I love that. That is also an awful lot of what I hope. Wonderful. So, just this conversation is not necessarily the only time that we get to have a podcast episode together. Hopefully we'll come back to the program at some point. But in case we just don't do that for a long time, what do you want to leave our audience thinking about? What are the things that you would hope that they can do? Whether it's small actions, medium, large, it doesn't matter. What are the things that you want to leave them with for advice on how to make that new future?
Yes, I mean, I think it's twofold, right? I think, leaders need to do a little bit of like self-discovery. I think that is fundamental, right? So take that internal journey, try to discover who you are and what this means to you. And once you've discovered that, understand the advantages of being kind at work. There are so many, right? And the business world, there is a huge connection to, impact on employees' motivation, impact on productivity, reduced turnover time, right? Like I have tons of data that we could talk about maybe perhaps in the next podcast. Well-being of employees, psychological safety, all that. I mean, we have so many mental things, issues going on in the world, but being kind at workplaces actually helps you with all of that, creating this safe environment and well-being for employees. Your workplace performance actually goes up if you have a safer environment. And then clearly all this ties to innovation, right? If you have that safe workplace and you thrive and you come up with more ideas. So while this is all so important in the business world, the journey actually starts from within, right? So to me, that's what I want to actually leave everyone with.
That's great. That's a wonderful thought. Well, how can people find you and interact with you and support you in your next big adventures that you're taking on in life?
Yeah. So you can absolutely, reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. Hopefully you'll see that. I like to post a lot about, transformation, that work that's near and dear to my heart, because that all is connected, the heart and the people and then the hands, right? So to me, that's fundamental. Hardeep Kaur on LinkedIn is the best way to reach me.
And it's Kaur for those of you who are listening in and aren't looking at anything right now. So wonderful. All right. Well, Hardeep, I cannot tell you how much joy this has brought me, because it's wonderful. It's great. And thank you for all of the advice and the insights that you have, especially on the workplace kindness, which is a big focus of mine. I think you had some really, really good ideas for how leaders can approach various situations. So thank you again for coming on to our Future is Kind podcast.
Michael, thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to staying connected. Thank you again.
This episode's kindness challenge. Reflect on who you are and how you can bring more of that self to work. Reflect on how you can create moments for others to share more about who they are and build in time for people to truly listen to each other. Want to get inspired about what the world could be like and how to build that kinder future? Check out these great books that Hardeep recommends. Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ by Daniel Goleman. He also has YouTube videos and podcasts. Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace by Mark Kramer. The Values Compass by Dr. Mandeep Rai. Brené Brown's video on empathy, easily searched up on YouTube. Emotional Intelligence 2.0, a book by Travis Bradbury and Gene Greaves. Thanks again for listening to our Future is Kind podcast, a podcast in search of a kinder future. Go out there and do something kind.